Hi, I'm Shay,
I'm Cody.
and we are Sinister Explorations. How is everybody today?
I'm a little toasty.
Are you warm in here?
A little bit.
I'm sorry. Well, you are
No,
wearing
I
a
thought that it would be fine. Because it's supposed to be,
Well, welcome to second summer.
70. Right. Second summer that lasts a week.
Went to Florida and it was colder in Florida than it is in Ohio.
Yes, they just got back from Horror Nights. Halloween Horror Nights. Favorite house?
Favorite house, Dr. Oddfellows.
Okay.
Yeah.
Stranger Things, which is funny because it was the very first one we did.
It was a good one.
It was.
Set-wise, yeah.
Yeah.
What was next?
No one asked.
I can't remember. We don't care.
I'm so sorry, Nick. I will ask you Sunday what your favorite house was.
He told me I don't remember. Maybe Last of Us.
Okay.
The Last of Us was a very close second for me. I felt like the clickers lend themselves very well to the
Clickers were perfect.
haunted house.
Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So that was a lot of fun. Did you see they're doing like a permanent one in
Vegas.
now?
Oh, I did see something about that.
Yeah, like a year-round
That's pretty
one.
cool.
I'm assuming the theme will change.
I don't know. I don't know how they're going to do it. We'll have to go check it out.
Maybe twice as expensive to get into, and maybe not.
Can't be.
Maybe no, it can't be.
No, I bet with it being year-round, it won't be.
I wonder if it's like bigger since it's just like one house, like longer.
Maybe.
They looked huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just one.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think so.
I have no idea.
well, you'll probably make it there before we do. So let us know. Nobody travels when you have 8 dogs.
You can go to it when you go to see Christina
Yes.
Aguilera.
Oh.
Christina Aguilera has a new residency that premieres New Year's Eve weekend.
Oh.
So I'm like, hey, let's make a New Year's trip. I can get an employee rate. No.
I believe it was one where line 4 the Oddfellows one, where that was trying to push it through, was not happening.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
It was very unsuccessful.
Yeah.
Well, we got to do this because it's a long one, and it's going to be 3 parts. I'm really going to try to stick to 3 parts. I'm sorry. So we're going to jump back into the story of the Kirtland Massacre. You guys ready?
If you've not listened to the first part of this episode, number 1, why? But we highly recommend you listen to the first part before tapping into this episode.
Definitely. You will not know what is going on.
Let's get poopy.
All right, let's get poopy. So we last left Jeff and Alice Lundgren covered in feces and dabbling with the initial taste of building a cult. Jeff had been canceled by leaders at the Slover Park congregation for his more radical teachings, and he transitioned to teaching out of his home with a small group of church members before he announced that his family was moving to Kirtland Temple in Ohio. Jeff was working as a tour guide at Kirtland Temple and overseeing donations and store sales, from which he was stealing money.
Of course.
A lot of money. His family was also being financially supported by numerous families in the congregation. He was also in his full Indiana Jones cosplay mode, exploring Chapin Forest, seeking access to what he thought was a secret chamber where the hidden golden plates and sword of Laban must be kept. So you guys all remember that, right?
Yep.
All right. So as we go through episode 2, we're going to be going through the collection of cult followers. So you may find yourself asking how in the world he was able to convince people to follow him. It's helpful to keep in mind that in the RLDS teachings, spiritual experiences and visions are highly sought after as a sign that God is speaking to you. Mm-hmm. And I think that really plays a big role in why these people are following him. And if you're taught to seek prophecy, is it really far-fetched to believe the people around you are receiving visions and revelations from God?
Right.
And especially people like Jeff, who are exceptional manipulators. So we'll jump in here by starting with our friend Kevin Curry. Do you guys remember Kevin?
I remember the name.
Okay.
Was he the one that slipped on a rock?
No. That was Dennis Avery.
Okay.
Kevin was Jeff's buddy from the Navy.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, he was teaching him Mormon scripture. Well, Kevin showed up for a tour of the Kirtland Temple, and, of course, had dinner with Jeff and Alice that evening. He shared he was struggling with depression and drinking, brought on by his recent divorce, and he had recently had a homosexual relationship.
Gasp.
That's a big no-no in Mormonism, of course. But those were all vulnerabilities on which Jeff was able to pray. Jeff shared his findings from the Doctrine of Covenants, which he felt proved that Jesus was going to reveal himself in at Kirtland. And for Kevin, who was seeking a purpose for his life, that was enough to get him to latch on.
That vulnerability.
Yes, it is. He finds it in all of these people so fast. Like, he has an innate ability to look at somebody and be like, oh, this is what you are.
Well, and it sounds like he's the type that people just opened up to him as well.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Didn't help any.
The arrogance was real. So Kevin quickly started making the 10-hour one-way bus trip from Buffalo, New York to Kirtland, Ohio every weekend.
Jeez.
20 hours a weekend.
No thanks.
Mega busing it.
This would have been in like the mid-'80s,
Right.
So I don't think so.
Yeah, definitely a Greyhound.
So I'm sure there was feces in that story too.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
His personal struggles drew zero sympathy from Jeff. Jeff made him think he felt sympathetic for him, of course. But after being arrested, Jeff actually says, quote, Kevin was a leech, really, and a leech needs to be attached to a host. I became that host.
Well, that's a great friend.
Oh, he's a friend to no one but himself. It was just unemotional as that. That was it. And with money always being on Jeff and Alice's mind, they saw a lucrative opportunity in Kevin. To put an end to his 20-hour round-trip bus rides every weekend, which he had been making for 2 months at this point, they said, hey, you should move here, move in with us. You'll have more time to study with Jeff. You won't have to take this horrible bus trip. You'll get out of Buffalo. I shouldn't say I've never been to Buffalo. It might be lovely.
They have a hockey team.
They do.
I know that about Buffalo.
They do.
It gets too cold.
That is true. But that's all it really took to convince him to say, okay, yeah, I'll move in with you guys.
Don't do it, Kevin. Don't.
And of course, in exchange, he handed over his paycheck because he had a job because he worked at the VA hospital in Buffalo. He just got transferred to Cleveland VA.
Wow.
So he was making a pretty substantial amount of money. It was $1,600 a month paycheck, and that was in like 84 or something. So
What's the inflation on that?
I think it was like $4,200 a month.
That's pretty good.
I'm going to say it'd be quite a bit
Yeah.
for the 80s.
Yeah, I did look. I didn't type it, but I did look at that. So all he got for that was studying with Jeff and room and board, food. Yeah. So cult member number 1 down. And here we see Jeff exercise the cult leader's tactics of making your followers financially dependent on you. And he will repeat this with every one of his followers to come. If you want to get a really good sense of that, Jim Jones, a good one.
Yeah.
A lot of them, most of them. Jeff then turned his attention to the recruitment of Sharon Blunchley and Danny Kraft Jr. Both of them were interns at Kirtland Temple. So personally, I don't think Jeff saw much financial opportunity in Sharon or Danny. I think their recruitment was more about him figuring out how to really hone his skills of manipulation. But that is speculative, but neither of them.
They're like a practice round.
Yeah, Danny was 19 and going to school, and I think Sharon had been like a waitress maybe in her. So it is a fact, though, that Jeff saw Sharon as an easy target. She was plain looking, overweight, hadn't been on a date even though she was 27. She lacked confidence and oozed a desire for acceptance.
More vulnerability.
More vulnerability. Super easy target. Alice is actually the one that took Sharon under her wing. And she gave her a makeover. And I don't want to say this, but taught her the art of being sultry.
Well, see, you take the poop. You smear it all over you.
Just make sure you're in the tub.
She would teach a majority of the female cult members that concept of being sultry, because in Mormonism, in her mind, Mormonism was saying the women are there to please the men. Yeah. And of course, according to Jeff, their feeble minds couldn't fully understand his teachings, so what was he going to do with them? He just sent them to Alice.
I wonder if they ever went on a date with a guy or something, and when it came time, to have sex or whatever, they're just like, all right, poop on me. And the guy's
no, she didn't teach him poop stuff. Oh. That wasn't sultry. No.
I hope that was not the case.
That was not what she was teaching them. It only took 2 weeks before Sharon was convinced she should stay in Kirtland.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. Unlike Kevin, though, she didn't technically live with the Lundgrens. She had her own apartment, but she spent most of her time being a handmaiden to Alice, doing the cooking, the cleaning, taking care of the kids. And she did get a job locally as a grocery store clerk, and was convinced to turn over her paycheck over to Jeff as well, because she ate food while she was there. And he told her, well, I'll pay your rent. Don't worry about that.
That was going to be my question. You have your own apartment. How are you paying your rent? But
he...
whatever it takes, I guess.
Did.
Yeah.
He did not. He did not pay her rent.
Oh.
But he said he would do that. He told... You will see that repeated too. So that's 2 down. Now we're at number 3. He's going to go after Danny Kraft Jr., 19. Came to study the architecture of the temple. He's an art student, or want to be art student. They quickly learned his parents were divorced when he was young, so they assumed the role of being his supportive parental unit. He actually would end up calling them mom and dad. Yeah.
No.
Things didn't go quite as well as Jeff had hoped with Danny. He did leave Kirtland after his internship was over to attend art school in Portland, but he returned, and when he returns, he ends up being the most ride or die to Jeff.
You would almost think going away would make him wake up.
Yeah. Do you know how long he had stayed gone?
I think just a year. He came back that following year to intern. Yeah, it was a year. He came back to intern again, and he didn't leave after that.
Got it.
Yep. So the work to recruit Sharon and Danny wasn't without issue, because Kevin took note of the manipulation. So Jeff and Alice kept constantly asking Kevin questions about what he was learning about Sharon and Danny, and then would use that to bring them in. And Kevin was just like, that's a little sus. And Kevin didn't share his concerns with the group, but he was definitely locking that away in his noggin about really questioning Jeff's legitimacy. So yay, Kevin.
Good.
Yeah, yay, Kevin. So while Jeff was managing to snag members, there were certainly people who were not entranced by him. The most ardent hater of Jeff was Reverend Dale Luffman, who is stake president of Kirtland. Those two were at odds almost immediately. Dale just read him. It was hard for Dale, though, because the congregation, which was trying to be a little bit more traditional and not bending to the more liberal ways that the Mormon church was going, thought he was a plant there to kind of change them over and get them more on board with the liberal things. So he was already kind of not liked. But he read Jeff. Jeff would publicly state that Dale's sermons were full of lies and was totally unapologetic about it when he was confronted. So he was on Dale's list, but Dale couldn't do a lot, like I said. The one thing that Dale could do was deny Jeff's entry into the priesthood. And that is exactly what he did. And we know how bad that pisses Jeff off. So he was livid. And while Dale saw Jeff as being problematic, I'm pretty sure the LDS church was also aware Jeff was an issue. The lords, Bill and Eleanor Lord, that were overseeing the temple's managers, they were starting to notice some problematic things in his teaching, so I'm sure it made its way up the ladder. And I say this even though they now deny it. In exchange for Jeff moving his allegiance to their ways, the local LDS church actively tried to recruit Jeff by offering him a position on the Council of 12, which is the church governing council that answers only to the prophet. He did not accept it, and they took that off their records that they ever made that offer to him.
Fascinating.
They did this even after Jeff was ousted from Kirtland Temple, which we will get to in a second. There's some children outside if you can hear them screaming bloody murder.
Garbage pail kids.
So I think they made the offer to him to keep them under his watch, but
Which would have been smart, but it's a shady dude.
it's super shady, dude. So cult member recruiting efforts kicked off full force on Memorial Day weekend of 1985 when a tour group arrived in Kirtland from Independence, Missouri, which was Jeff's hometown.
Yep.
The group came seeking a special tour from Jeff, as word back home was he was very knowledgeable and working at the Kirtland Temple.
Gag.
Yeah.
I thought he wasn't very well liked back home.
It depends on who it was. So the people that wanted to keep women out of the priesthood, that was really the thing that set that all off, were very on Jeff's side.
Okay.
And
Kind of people you want in your corner.
and at this time, the RLDS church is splintering too. So they're about to branch off into two different versions of themselves, if you will. So this tour group from back home included Richard Brand and Shar Olson. I know I'm giving you guys a lot of names. You don't have to remember the names so specifically, but they're all involved in this story pretty heavily. So during the tour, Jeff learned of Richard Brand's questioning of Mormon elders and that he was not tithing as he felt the church's leaders were not deserving. And even more importantly, Jeff learned about Richard's recent $15,000 inheritance and earning potential as a recent graduate in civil engineering.
It's looking pretty nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's shiny. So he took special note of Richard.
I bet he did.
Yeah. When Richard returned the following year for another tour, again with Shar Olson, and then this time with his best friend Greg Winship, Jeff turned on his full charm because there was no way he was letting that cash cow get away. Outside of having a degree in civil engineering, a brand new pickup truck he purchased with his inheritance money, and a growing skepticism about the church's current path, it was obvious that Richard was reluctant to adult and was seeking an alternative to the expectation of getting married and starting a family. It's just kind of the path you took, and he was engaged. He was not here for it.
Where were these people's? Well, I guess all you have is probably Mormon friends.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all they know, too.
That's all you know. It's all you know.
Yeah.
So Jeff was like, oh, man, I can take you away from that life. You don't need to do that. He informed Richard, Shar, and Greg that he received prophecy that Kirtland was the new Zion. And Jeff was already boldly making claims against the church leadership and liberal teachings, which resonated with Richard. Moving to Kirtland would allow him to escape that path he was on, so he announced he was moving to Kirtland.
Gosh.
Jeff immediately took to counseling Richard, telling him he cared too much about material possessions, and this was blocking his path to the truth.
Should probably give up that truck to Jeff.
In response, Richard sold his brand new truck, turned the earnings from the sale plus everything in his bank account over to Jeff to prove he didn't need material things, and was serious about learning God's truth. Cha-ching.
Jeff, you didn't need that money. You don't need material things either.
So at one point, Alice is ordering, this is so weird, 3 times a week she's ordering some special name platter from Red Lobster. It costs $30 back then, so it's $100 or something today.
But did they get the Cheddar Bay biscuits?
I know it had shrimp on it. She loves shrimp.
Well, you got to get the Cheddar Bay biscuits.
So that was an expensive habit.
Yeah.
Got to pay that Red Lobster bill. Richard's best friend Greg wasn't far behind in cult membership. Greg was unhappily married, so all Jeff had to do was say that he had a vision that Greg's wife wasn't his intended match from God. So Greg filed for divorce, moved to Kirtland. So that takes us to mid-1986 and cult enrollment at 5 members. We've got Kevin, Sharon, Danny, Richard, and Greg. So we're up to 5. And even more excitingly than membership numbers, an angel appeared to Jeff in Chapin Forest.
How convenient.
I know. And he revealed the hidden golden plates.
Awesome.
And Jeff was able to translate them even without Joseph Smith's hat.
Did anyone else see these plates?
He wasn't allowed to show them.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, wasn't allowed to show them. And wasn't allowed to tell anybody exactly what they said other than they were about Jeff and the amazing work that God wanted Jeff to do.
I'm gonna have to try this sometime. Like, when I let the dogs out or something, be like, honey, I found these plates in the yard. I can't tell you what they said exactly.
So, to celebrate this news, Jeff ran in and told Alice he wanted to take her to dinner. No, that is absolutely not what happened. He told her to get naked because they were going to have anal sex.
There's the poop.
Yep.
Yeah. So I didn't go into deep detail about the poop in this one. There is more to come in part 3. I will say of sad note, though, so Jeff had made a comment that after having their 4 children, Alice was too loose to get him off. So it just exclusively went to anal sex, and he was so brutal about it that she was bleeding quite a lot. And what she was really doing during this time was drinking heavily. The cult members said she would spend days just really drunk and on pills. And
I think you would have to get through that.
yeah,
I'm not saying it's ever the way to go, but
no,
sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do.
I still don't feel bad for her, but
No.
yeah. So I didn't really put that in here, but I just did. I just told you that little nugget that's in my noggin. I can't get this stuff out now.
I would assume that Mormons aren't like very approving of alcohol, are they?
No.
No. Okay.
No alcohol, no caffeine. No.
Just wonder how that like made the other people feel.
It's a good question.
Even to the point, Utah, they control the bars.
That's right.
Watered down
Yeah.
alcohol. So
Oh,
people
yeah.
don't get too drunk.
I learned that from SLC Punk because they have to drive to Wyoming to get real beer.
Yep.
Matthew Lillard, I love you. Also in mid-1986 was the Highlander movie release. How on earth does this relate to the story,
How was
you
this
may
important?
ask? Well, let me tell you. Alice had a dream, a prophetic dream, which she couldn't quite make sense of, but when she saw the Highlander movie, she knew that was it.
It all clicked.
Alice had dreamt the Highlander movie before seeing it. I did not see her credited, but it was her dream.
So we owe Highlander to Alice.
Alice.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Alice.
Alice.
Yeah. Have you seen the Highlander?
I think so.
Okay. He has not.
No.
So let me quickly give you
I
a
know
little...
there can only be one.
There can only be one. So it was originally a comic book series, and then it became a movie. It is about Connor MacLeod, a member of a rare race of immortals who can only die from being beheaded with a sword wielded by another of his race. Secret connection to the Sword of Laban, maybe?
That's what I was going to ask.
These immortals hunt and behead each other in order to absorb the other's power and ultimately have knowledge of everything and become ruler of the world.
Okay.
For most people, good movie. Jeff and Alice, Jeff's destiny of becoming one and all knowing in the truth
I
of
feel
God.
like there's some connections here.
Yeah. The movie The Highlander became their training video for their recruits. Yep. And Alice was absolutely obsessed with Jeff being the true seer.
Wow.
Side note, Jeremy and I did have a friend who may have thought he was Neo after seeing The Matrix, but he was like 12, not however old these people are at this point. Shout out to Tim, who will never hear this because he lives in Vietnam now.
We're real popular in Vietnam.
Oh, are we?
Yeah,
Okay.
they love us in Vietnam.
Yeah, that's where most of our listeners are from, actually.
Vietnam, great. So I'm going to ask you all a question, and I sent the question to you, and I'm sure you're like, what in the world? So if you were going to build a cult based on a movie, so not a movie about a cult, but taking a movie and you're going to make a cult, what would it be?
I thought long and hard about this, and I don't have a good answer at the moment.
Wow.
There are several that I could think of.
Okay.
Jeremy, what about you?
Well, my problem is I automatically started thinking about movies that are kind of already about cults. Like, first I thought, obviously, Urban Harvest, the
Yeah.
best Children of the Corn movie. But that doesn't count because it's already a
I
cult.
kept saying, no, not movies that are about cults. So it is a movie that you would build a cult based on.
So I think I landed on Napoleon Dynamite was what I landed on.
You did. You did.
For no real good reason, other than that's just the best movie ever made.
Raise llamas and
Yeah. Like,
throw footballs over mountains.
yeah, you know, like when people in the military die, they do like the 21 gun
Yeah.
salute. Like we'll throw steaks
Tater tots.
over the mountain. Yeah. And we'll eat tots every Sunday.
So the one movie that I kept going back to, and me being me, everyone that I thought of was all horror movies.
Okay.
But Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers,
Okay.
it doesn't really revolve around a cult, but religion. It talks about the druid background of Sam Hain and all this. And so that's probably what I would do.
Okay.
I feel like we went very different directions.
Yeah, we did.
I thought you would pick Fight Club or The Warriors.
Oh, okay. Yeah, she told me like she thought there was like certain ones I would pick, and I've been trying to think about it. Those are both very good.
The Fight Club.
Especially Fight Club.
Yeah.
Because Fight Club's amazing.
I would do Nightmare Before Christmas because then I could have like all Halloween but with lights.
That definitely makes sense for you. I said that she would do Minions. That's what I thought she was going to pick.
Because people aren't as good as Minions. I couldn't do Minions.
So
If Minions existed, I would absolutely have a cult of Minions.
your commune could be Halloween Town.
Yes.
I like it.
Yes. So everybody think about what your movie would be for a cult. All right. So now Jeff wasn't only looking for God's hidden message through chiastic reading of the scriptures, he was looking for scriptures that prove the Highlander was part of the cult's prophetic guide. And then it came to him, reflecting back on the vision he had when he saw Jesus on the cross when his son punctured his lung with his rib and was in the hospital. And he realized that wasn't a vision. It was a memory, a flashback. He was there. He was at the crucifixion.
Huh.
Yeah. He was the last seer and immortal, just like the Highlander.
And now I feel like I have to watch Highlander.
I mean, I watched it when I was little. I mean, I remember it being good, but
It seems like a movie that's probably on like Pluto or Freevee or something.
probably
Maybe that'll be my pick for the next movie night.
to be. Yeah. When Jeff gave this news to the group, everybody was stoked. Everyone except Kevin Curry. Kevin noped right on out of there and went back to Buffalo.
Yay for Kevin.
I would love to give Kevin a big W on this and say he's a super smarty.
Oh, don't tell me he goes back.
He does come back, but he does get his win eventually.
Okay.
So Kevin's got a rough life going on, so don't fault him too much. We are going to like give big yays to Kevin at some point. Okay. Jeff had been spreading the good news about himself and his teachings via snail mail to people back in Independence, Missouri. And it didn't take long for Dennis and Tanya Patrick, they were friends way back in college, right, to announce they were moving to Kirtland. Dennis quit his job as an aerospace engineer and sold their house to move to Kirtland. And of course, they immediately turned over their savings and paychecks in support of the new Zion.
Wow.
His recruiting efforts also reached Dennis and Cheryl Avery, the guy that slipped on the rock. So they were the first ones to come out to Kirtland and visit. Which you might think is a little surprising because Jeff was always complaining about how annoying the Averys were, right? People found him off-putting. But Jeff's opinion changed when he learned that Dennis inherited some money when his mom passed away. Dennis had used the money to pay off his mortgage and buy a car which Dennis and Cheryl gave to Jeff after their first trip because they were super fucking nice people, even if they were dull. So they came out, saw that they didn't have a car, gave them their car. And what did Alice do? Complained about the car not being nice enough.
A free car.
Yes. Because
Can I get her to Red Lobster?
I know I wanted to let you all form your own opinions about these characters, but this lady infuriates me so much that I just can't.
No one that I can think of, except maybe Kevin, has any redeemable qualities.
No, none.
I was hoping someone would.
One of them will.
Yeah.
One other one will in a minute. In my opinion, while Jeff never said this ever during his arrest or anything, I think he invited the Averys out because he thought they would sell their house and come to Kirtland with a bunch of money because he paid off his mortgage. Mm-hmm. But being the only pure-hearted believers in the group, they were so excited to move to Kirtland, they sold their house for $20,000 because they just wanted to move so fast.
He's pissed.
He was pissed.
I bet he regrets that decision to invite them out.
They still had money in their bank account, which they all turned over to Jeff because Jeff said, I'll pay your rent on your house, right? He doesn't. Yeah, so he still made money, but I don't think they were coming with what Jeff hoped they were coming with. Jeff was also able to recruit Char Olson when she came to visit Richard in September of '86. Char's divorced parents had remarried and relocated to other states, so she was lonely in Missouri. She was already friends with Richard and Greg, so she felt like, yeah, I'll just move out there. And she, like Danny, ended up referring to Jeff and Alice as mom and dad. So. The next month brought Ron and Susie Luff, who Jeff had been writing since their tour to Kirtland Temple the year before, and who were more traditionalist and wanted to keep women subservient to men. So by late '87, the cult count was at 23 people when you include the children. So we have Alice, Jeff, Damon, who's their son, who's now 19, plus their 3 younger children, Sharon Blunchley, Danny Kraft, Richard Brand, Greg Winship, Dennis and Tanya Patrick and their 1 child, Dennis and Cheryl Avery and their 3 children, Ron and Susie Luff and their 2 children, and Char Olson.
I feel like this grew very fast.
It took like 3 years.
Was it 3?
It was like 3 years.
I think like 1 or 2. Okay.
But wait, because in early August, Kevin Curry comes back as cult member 24. Don't boo him, he's not going to stay.
I'm just sad for him.
I know.
Going back.
Recruitment made Jeff sloppy and arrogant, though. And one day when he was giving a tour at the temple, he made a statement which insinuated that the church's current president prophet, Wallace Smith, was a fraud. That, combined with the constantly missing money, now equaling somewhere between $21,000 and $40,000 at this point.
It's crazy.
Was enough for church leaders to finally send notice that he was to be fired. So, like...
Just now.
Yes, just now. This has been years.
Like, you can steal from us, but you can't badmouth us.
You can't badmouth that. And like all good displaced cult leaders before him, he decided, I need a commune.
Yeah, of course.
He managed to find a 5-bedroom farmhouse with a large barn and an apple orchard for $650 a month. That would be $700 today.
Huh.
Yeah. And he didn't just want a commune. He wanted a well-armed commune. And he started buying guns, camo, tents, and started preaching about Armageddon.
Yeah.
It's a quick descent.
So this got real serious real quick.
Yeah, I'm seeing
Yes.
a lot of commonalities with some other cults now.
Yeah. So they're all living there at the commune now, minus the Averys who are in their own house, and I believe the Luffs are in their own home, but don't quote me on that one. But they were all there all the time. So he started holding scripture studies nightly, some lasting all night. So now he's sleep depriving people. He imposed sessions, what he called sessions, which were punishments, as a way to establish emotional dominance over the group. He already had all this.
Sleep deprived.
Oh, yeah. Sleep deprived, emotionally just annihilated, and financially dependent on Jeff. Yeah. And they had started to the cult members had started to cut people out of their families. So they weren't allowed to talk to their families anymore, which is pretty common also. So no phone use, no incoming or outgoing mail. So they were really cut off from everybody. Mm-hmm. And this is the 80s, so no cell phones. He just cut off the home phone. Within weeks of moving to the commune, Jeff called the group together to announce that he'd received instruction from God. Jeff was to be referred to as a destroyer, and he would be starting his next role as a WWE star. I'm kidding. But you believed it, didn't you?
I did.
Yep.
Nothing would surprise me with this.
Trying to think of what tag team he'd be a part of. Cactus Jack or something.
This story is so crazy that I could have just gone on with it. You would have been like, okay. No, he said God referred to him as a destroyer and told him that people will die at your hands. Jeff's translation of this message was that the cult was to take over the Kirtland Temple and kill all of the wicked sinners in control.
Oh, wow.
And so Jeff announced planned temple takeover in February of 1988. And since this cult is built on a movie, The Highlander, he naturally chose other movies to prepare the cult for a planned temple takeover.
Is that what they named it, or?
No, that's what I named it. No. Mainly Rambo First Blood and Apocalypse Now. And he started only talking about the most violent stories in the Bible to prove to them that spilling of blood was necessary for him to be given God's power and build the path for Jesus' return. The targets of the attack were many and included Kenneth Fisher, haven't really mentioned him, but he was a bishop living near Kirtland Temple, Bill and Eleanor Lord, who were the managers, Dale and Judy Luffman, along with their 3 children. So Dale was the leader that kept him from entering the priesthood and ended up firing him. And their deaths had to come as a result of beheading, because Highlander, duh. Yeah. In order to support this narrative, Jeff had to really do some scripture twisting, not just teaching chiastic scripture reading. He was now taking verses from multiple different books of scripture, the Bible, the covenants, really anything that he could find. And I want to call out here that after Alice's arrest, she clearly stated that this activity of Jeff making his own scriptures caused her to think that he was a con man.
That was the thing?
Yeah.
For her? Okay.
She was quoted as saying, "I believed that he was giving everyone a line of baloney, and I decided the temple takeover stuff was bullshit." Yet Alice said nothing to any cult member. She did nothing to change their course of action. And according to the cult, she just did everything she did to continue to prove to them that Jeff was a prophet.
Why? Did he ever that brainwashed?
You'll have to come to your own conclusion on that. And I, of course, will share mine at the end of this because I have opinions. So many. It wasn't long before Jeff announced to the group that God had given him a date for the plan to take over the temple. They would start their attack on May 1st, and Jesus would reveal himself on May 3rd after a shootout with the police. According to Jeff, God would cause an earthquake which would swallow up the Gentiles and release demons from hell, and then a large hill would arise where Jesus would appear to the group.
In Ohio.
In Cleveland.
Okay.
Yep. He claimed that the date of May 3rd was derived from some carvings that were on the front door of the Kirtland Temple, which were some ovals, and he did some, I don't know, mystical calculation to say that was May 3rd. But really it was because it was his birthday.
very important date.
Yes. He gave everyone in the group super cool nicknames like Eagle One and Falcon. And Danny Kraft was able to put his art skills to use, where he made a map and a drawing of the temple and the temple grounds. And then Jeff dropped the hammer with the announcement that only 12 adult members of the group would survive to meet Jesus. Dun, dun, dun.
Only 12 adults.
Was it Nighthawk? Was it Dragon?
I don't know what name he gave himself, but Jeff, Alice, and Damon guaranteed to make it. So that meant 3 adults were going to have to die.
And all the children.
Didn't say anything about the children.
Okay.
At this point. Later, he will say he didn't want to take care of the children, so the children have to go too.
Gotcha.
3 adults. Everyone, of course, wanted to know if they were safe, so they all started going to Jeff individually and asking. And of course, the story changed every time. Oh yeah, Cody, you're fine. We're gonna. Jeremy asks. Oh, Jeremy, no, it's Shay's gonna have to go. So they all thought they were okay, of course. What stayed the same though was that he said if an unclean sinner survived, he was going to have to kill them himself, and this included their children.
Oh.
Kevin, here we go, Kevin, picked up on the signals that he might be on the hit list because he'd already left once and pissed Jeff off.
Let's get back to Buffalo.
He was also still leery of Jeff and saw the tremendous fantasy of these stories being shared and believed by the group. So within a few days, Kevin went to work, turned in his resignation, drove to the Greyhound station, hopped on a bus and went back to Buffalo. And hours later, a friend called Jeff and just said, the car is at the Greyhound station. Bye.
Kevin was like, I saw Highlander. I know how this ends.
Got the hell out of Dodge.
Kevin was so scared he went into hiding.
I don't blame him.
He wouldn't even tell his mom where
sure.
he was. And that was legit. Jeff spent days going around the house saying he was going to kill him. He was going to find him and he was going to kill him. But there was work to be done, so eventually Jeff's attention turned to the work that needed to be done at home. March and April were spent training for the takeover, so they were learning military procedures, all about their weapons. The women had to learn to take the guns apart and reassemble them in the dark and identify the guns in the dark. And they were integrating one new member, Debbie Olivares, who also happened to be Jeff's cousin.
I wonder what made Debbie think, like, this is the time to join.
Money, financial ease. It was financial ease. I won't go into her whole story, but it was financial ease.
My cousin seems to have it going on. I'm just trying to team up with him.
Exactly. So on April 22nd, Jeff went over the final details of the takeover with the group. There was no longer a need to kill and capture Bill and Eleanor Lord since they had moved away from Kirtland. So the group was like, yes, sweet, we don't have to kill those 2 people. That's awesome. The plan was that the women would stay at the farm with the children until they were alerted by walkie-talkie to come to the temple. The men would split into 2 groups, Ron, Dennis, and Greg breaking into the temple, and Danny, Jeff, Richard, and Damon going house to house killing the occupants until they came to the Luffmans, would capture the Luffman family, bring them to the temple, and Jeff was going to behead them.
I just love that they're using walkie-talkies.
I had to include that because I didn't want anyone to think they were like just screaming or.
Nighthawk, this is Dragon, over.
Yes. Jeff also informed the group, minus the Patricks, that the Patricks were going to have to be killed. Yeah. So Jeff would be the one to kill Dennis Patrick, but God wanted someone else to kill Tanya and their daughter Molly, who I'm pretty sure was 8 years old at this time.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's awful.
That someone was Alice. Alice's only response? We all have to do what we have to do. The woman who said she thought he was a con man
And saw through the bullshit.
was going to kill an 8-year-old girl and her mother.
Sound like she didn't see through the bullshit.
I think she totally did. I think she saw through it the entire time. Dang it, I'm not supposed to be giving my opinion. But I can't with this lady. She was going to execute a child. Okay. There were some blows in store for Jeff prior to May 1st, though. So Char Olson was starting to become disillusioned and suspicious of Jeff. She'd witnessed a few instances of Jeff lying, but there were 2 instances in particular which put her off. Not the planned murder of the families, but some personal concerns. One instance was she received a call at work from a debt collector calling her about being several months late on her car payment, a payment that Jeff was supposed to be making. And the other was when Jeff caught her on the phone with her mom without getting his permission. And Alice's reaction to that instance, that disobedience, was to take to bed for days due to how upset she was. And when Shar went to apologize to Alice, Alice said, "As a mother, it's just a burden I'm going to have to bear." And she spent 3 more days in bed before she could come out and rejoin the group.
Poor, pitiful Alice.
Yep. It was that daytime Emmy Award-winning performance that sent Shar over the edge. And unlike Kevin, she didn't sneak away. She went and told Jeff she was leaving.
I can't imagine this fared well for Shar.
Went over about as well as you can imagine. Well, he didn't kill her. So maybe a little better than you can imagine. Alice and Danny spent hours trying to convince her to stay. And when that didn't work, Jeff took over, but he was a complete dick about it. He told her if she left, she would die.
Wow.
Terrified her. She said she would stay, to which Alice's response was that she staged the whole thing because, quote, she was horny and wanted to go get screwed. No idea where this is coming from, but that was Alice's take on it. Shar managed to stay 2 more weeks before she was just completely done. She didn't leave without getting a burn-in on Jeff, though, so she went to the barn to tell him, "I'm going, I got a U-Haul, I'm packing my stuff up, I'm out." Jeff told Shar her problem was being submissive to men, to which Shar replied, "Show me a man worth being submissive to." Got in her U-Haul and drove away.
Yes.
Dang.
All tea, all Shar. So, yay, Kevin, yay, Shar.
At least 2 people had brains.
Yes. The biggest blow, although not yet known by Jeff, was Kevin Curry making a visit to the FBI office in Buffalo to inform them of the cult's plan.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, there's this guy in Ohio, and he thinks he's the Highlander. Now, I know this sounds crazy, but follow me here.
Yeah, can you imagine that conversation?
That is exactly what happened, and they were like, okay, he's off his rocker. So they really didn't believe him.
Of course.
They didn't.
Yeah.
And they told him, well, this really sounds like a local matter. So go talk to local authorities. So Kevin, having a pretty strong moral compass, called the Kirtland police. And he talked to Chief Dennis Yarborough. And unlike the FBI, Yarborough did take him seriously because he had been raised RLDS.
Oh, okay. That's
So
an
none of this
interesting turn of
sound-
events.
Yeah, none of this sounded completely crazy
Yeah.
to him.
Yeah.
And he knew who Jeff Lundgren was. He even knew about his ongoing feud with Dale Luffman, and he had already actually been asking around about who was living in this farmhouse and what's going on there.
Perfect.
So, he said that he was like 90% sure this story was legitimate.
Legit.
And he had a friend, Special Agent Robert Alford, in the local FBI office. So he called him, but sadly, without any evidence, the FBI couldn't really get involved yet. But that was okay. Yarborough was not going to give up on his gut feeling, so he asked his 6 officers if they knew of anything strange happening at the farm. And there was one officer, Ron Andolsek, who had. Ron had recently gotten a call from Jeff's neighbor complaining about the farm's geese being out. So he went to go deal with that. And during their conversation with the neighbor, she said that her daughter had been told by Caleb Lundgren, so the youngest Lundgren boy, that on May 3rd, the earth was going to open up and all of the demons were going to come up. So they connected that statement with the statement from Kevin Curry about an earthquake and thought, maybe this is real.
Right.
So he was able to convince the mayor, Yarborough was, to pay his officers overtime to stake out the farm, and this all happened within 12 hours of being phoned by Kevin.
Wow.
This guy was on top of it.
Yes.
Okay.
So we're going to take a moment and thank Yarborough, because so often with these cases, you hear they do nothing. Like, they do nothing. They don't take anything seriously. Oh, they ran away, or oh, this, that, or the other. And they do nothing. Or if they do something, they bumble it irreversibly and ruin all the evidence.
Right.
So,
Kudos.
congratulations. We're clapping silently, so it's not really loud. I think it's important to thank them when cops do good work. So Yarborough and Andolsek were not in agreement about how to go about investigating Jeff and preventing anybody from getting hurt. But they came to a compromise, which included having Jeff stop by the station regarding the complaints from neighbors about gunshots on the farm. And they were cool about it. They were like, oh, it's probably just, like paint guns or something, or paintball or something like that. But it was enough to let them know, like, we see you.
Mm-hmm.
We're watching. And they did that on, 3 days prior to May 1st.
So we're getting
there. So on the evening of May 1st, officers were staked out around Jeff's house and the temple, but nothing happened. Same the next night. Then the calendar turned to May 3rd. Yarborough thought, okay, if it's going to happen, it's happening tonight. He positioned himself behind the temple so he would be the first to see Jeff and his armed cult coming. And then nothing. Nothing happened. Apparently the visit to the police station was enough to spook Jeff. And they didn't do anything. And he simply told the cult the reason for calling it off was their fault, since their sins were too still great in the eyes of the Lord for Jesus to appear. And plus, the church doors only gave him the date of May 3rd. It didn't have a year, so.
Could have been next year.
Could have been next
5
year.
years from now.
Could have been 10 years ago. Who knows? The cult's not showing up did not deter Yarborough, though. He was like, I got a feeling something with this guy. I'm just going to keep digging. And he did. And eventually the digging by him and Andolsek, we'll give Andolsek a lot of credit in this story too, led them to Char Olson, who was still in the area working at a Chi-Chi's. Remember Chi-Chi's? I remember Chi-Chi's.
My dad loves Chi-Chi's.
Speaking of Chi-Chi's, I had a very upsetting experience that I just need to talk about.
Okay.
I was about to leave to come here tonight.
Oh, tonight?
And I'm on Facebook, and it says, Chi-Chi's is coming back to the state of Kentucky. I was like, yes, Chi-Chi's is back. It was a satire Facebook post.
Oh.
I was so disappointed.
I'm sorry.
I was brokenhearted.
We can feed you and Jeremy's dad really bland Mexican food.
Let's pour one out for Chi-Chi's.
Your dad also liked Don Pablo's.
He loved Don Pablo. He loves cardboard.
like
What
Don
can I say?
Pablo's
He
too.
loves cardboard.
That was going to be, that's really like coincidental though, that you just read a story about a fake
That is
Chi-Chi's
crazy.
and I'm talking about a Chi-Chi's restaurant waitress.
Synchronicities.
So Dale Luffman also connected with Char and learned that he was on Jeff's hit list. So he went out to Chi-Chi's to ask her and learn that. Luffman used the information to obtain excommunication papers from the church to serve to Jeff, which he got to deliver to him in person on October 10th.
Was he real smug about it?
Yeah, he was. Pulled up in the driveway, like, yeah. So he did that October 10th. That day, a thunderstorm rolled in and left behind a double rainbow.
Well, if that's not a sign
That's
from
a
God, I don't know
sign.
what is.
Well, everybody thought it was. They all ran inside, started looking through their Bibles to determine why rainbows were significant.
Mm-hmm.
And I swear they tried
They
to
had to
find...
look that up.
Yes, they did.
Oh, interesting.
What do you know? Rainbows?
It was God's promise not to flood the world ever again.
Oh, okay. Well, there's another one in Revelations. Do you know
that?
this
I'm
one?
not sure.
Okay, Revelation.
I just think they're pretty.
Yeah.
Especially the double ones.
I wonder if they ever looked in the scriptures for references to poop-covered dildos. Anyway, they found themselves reading a story from Revelation of the 4 horsemen and the apocalypse and the 7 seals that need to be broken in order for Jesus to make his return. They read of thunder that crashed at the opening of the first seal, and of a bow given to the rider of the white horse and a rainbow that appeared around a throne. Yeah. So over the next few nights, Jeff had manipulated scripture enough to convince his cult that the rider of the white horse was the destroyer himself, who would open the seals. And the next seal could only be opened by the spilling of blood, human blood, via a human sacrifice. And this sacrifice had to be performed within the next 6 months, and the victim of the sacrifice had to be one of their own. And this is where we'll end episode 2, and we'll pick back up next time.
You're really good at these cliffhangers.
With the sacrifice and eventual capture of Jeffrey Lundgren and his cult, and more fecal mania, of course.
It's just like right here.
Thank you guys so much for joining us. We hope you are enjoying our episodes as much as we are enjoying researching and putting them together. It's spooky season, so have a great spooky season and own your weird.
See ya.
Let's go to Chi-Chi's.
Fried ice cream.